Do. And we're live, back in the whatever world. I am sitting here with an immigration textbook because I've been looking through some of these old cases, trying to get to know some of the kind of old school case law related to immigration law. And it's a lot, particularly because when you go back into old immigration law, it wanders into some touchy subjects and all of that, but intertwined within that is a lot of it's an interesting combination of stuff that is no longer relevant and stuff that is super relevant, and trying to kind of untangle the two is complicated. And so as I'm looking through these old immigration cases, I'm trying to sort of figure out where the borders and the boundaries are between the information that's not relevant anymore and the stuff that is still relevant and that does kind of teach us a lot about what we need to know today to understand our current immigration system. And the nice thing about a casebook, which is what this is a casebook. Casebooks are what law students use generally to learn the law. And the reason for that is that cases tend to be written in a way that kind of goes through the history first. You know, when a judge writes a case, they start out by giving you the history. And so cases are a really good source of understanding law because they start out by explaining history and then applying it. So it's a really good way to learn. And so casebooks, as a learning tool, essentially go through and pick out a bunch of really good cases, well-written cases, and often they'll edit out a lot of the extraneous stuff and kind of cut them down to size to the stuff that you really need to see as a student to understand whatever point they're trying to make. So as a general rule, I'm sitting here looking at this casebook. The cases have already sort of been narrowed down to stuff that I need to see as a person trying to learn this stuff. But it's still a little bit of an effort to go through this and modernize what I'm reading. Because, I'm in a chapter right now. This chapter is called Immigration and the Constitution. And these are all cases, exactly what they sound like, right? These are all cases about immigration in a constitutional sense. And specifically, at the beginning, it breaks down into two points here: sources of federal immigration power and limits of federal immigration power under the Constitution. So look at these old cases and let's divide into where the power of the federal government comes from to lay out immigration law, and where the edges are, where the limits are on the federal powers to lay out constitution law, to restrict or whatever. Enumerate immigration law. And so it's a really good source of this, a really good way to learn this is to go back into these old cases and see at different points in time, what was the history right then, how was it applied right then, and then you move forward through time and see kind of how it evolves. And that's a lot of what they're doing here. But they'll sort of narrow it down so you don't have to go through the whole journey. They've kind of curated a journey for you, a trip for you. Hey, Snyder, how's it going? I see you there. And make this trip a little bit shorter, so you don't have to take the whole walk. And that makes this a little bit easier than walking the Sun. But it is still not you're not walking this, they're not holding your hand too much. And I'm sitting here reading particularly a lot of, thank you, Manuel. A lot of these older cases are I'm looking for those of you who just wanted, and I'm looking at it. I'm looking through my immigration law casebook here, and a lot of these older cases, there's a little bit of a cringe factor, a little bit of a that's a little rough to read, and it's almost all prior to a certain point in history. It's almost all about people coming specifically, and I'm not sure that they necessarily knew the difference, but they believe anyway, specifically from China. There was they believe that everybody's coming from China, and that seems to be the biggest concern, is people coming from, through the West Coast from China, and this, even though you hear a lot, we do talk a lot kind of about we almost do it a little bit as a joke today about the kind of backlash against the Irish and that sort of thing. And that was definitely there too. But a lot of the cases that you see are about Chinese exclusion. And I think that might be about and when in time the court was really stepping up and making itself known in the immigration. I think it's mainly regarding California. I think that makes the most sense, right? I mean, that's where they where have the most access to China, and I think particularly, I'm looking at this right here, and the thing that just caught my eye is it goes straight to the word Confucius, which is, is that really necessary? Because they're I think it's just so striking to the people at the time that they want other, look at something, something that is very different from what they're used to, and seeing something very different mixing in is kind of causing some dissonance. So, and that was where the most dissonance was. But in view of the enactment, let's see here. May not the thoughtful Chinese discipline of Confucius fairly ask, why do they send missionaries here? I don't know why that. It's kind of out of context, a little hard to understand. But so yeah, like I said, as I'm reading through this, there's a lot of but wrapped into this, there is a lot of really good history, really good important stuff that is still relied on today. And so it helps sort of figure out where we are in this process. And so that's what I've been up to today, is kind of going through here and looking at the especially kind of this line between the sources of federal power and the limits on federal power, particularly here when it comes to immigration and the Constitution. But those two things are so important, and seeing them come out of these old 1800s cases is pretty fascinating. And so it comes down to one of these things. Came out at the root. Something that I saw here said that. Let's see if I can find it again. But it essentially said that any country. Let me see if I can find it so I can say it exactly. The right of a nation to expel or deport foreigners who have not been naturalized or taken steps toward becoming citizens rests upon these grounds, kind of this ground of being a sovereign nation. And so this is sort of their core that they're using as the base, and they're building from that. That we're recognizing that we have sort of a now. First of all, I think it's important to note there that they are dividing anybody who's interested, taking any steps toward becoming citizens. If you're interested in becoming a citizen, that's different from somebody who's here and doesn't want to become a citizen. I don't know. I think that's kind of it. But they're separating those people and saying that the right of our country to cut out the people who don't want to join us is inherent in our being a country, and then they're moving from that, which is just kind of an interesting place to put your head when you start thinking about this. This is 1893. and this is Fong Yue Ting. That's the name of the case, the United States. So these were 3 people who were arrested for failure to possess the required papers, but they claimed to be living here for a long time and challenged the constitutionality. So the at the time there was a requirement that you had a white witness. That was the requirement. So they challenged the constitutionality of that, and I think that's what this case is coming down to. So times shift and change, but that's the thing, is that on the one hand, you're going to have these kind of rules that feel very dated, but then wrapped up in this is going to be this other discussion about kind of the sovereignty of a country and where the right to where the limits on federal power are and the rights of federal power are, and that is still going to be relevant today. So trying to unravel those two things, complicated and a little sometimes a little uncomfortable, but part of the journey. So that's how you learn. Sorry, I was kind of in my own head there for a little bit and I lost track. If undocumented immigrants are not allowed to attend college with state tuition, wouldn't that be segregation? I don't know. I think that was sort of discussed. Segregation is not always to segregate, to break people, to separate people from one another, isn't always the same thing. And I'm not saying that to say something is good or something is bad, but just from a legal mindset, we do kind of divide, we have different layers, different standards that we apply to different types of separating people by, I'm trying to think of a good word, group. And we apply different standards when we do that, when we do different types of divisions. Hi, Di. How are you? I wish I should have asked you in advance and see if you want to come up. I didn't mean to. I don't want to put you on the spot. But I was thinking about it. I almost asked you earlier today if you wanted. I forget what I was reading. I sent Di a message earlier because I saw something that there was a very crazy filing. I love having somebody to talk to now about these crazy filings when I see them. Yeah. So now I'm off on a tangent. It was a very crazy filing. I've been trying to follow, guys, this. I have not checked it in a little bit to see if anything new has happened in the DC case. I don't think anything new has happened. It just sort of seems like people have kind of backed off it a little bit and taken a breather on that one, which is why I've sort of been focused on the immigration stuff today, particularly since I've been watching downtown and people are, there seems to be a lot more movement on checking immigration status, things like that. And I kind of wanted to refresh my brain on, because I know there are very specific rules on things like random checkpoints and things like that. And they are very similar when it comes to immigration law, as they are, to random checkpoints for anything else. Random checkpoints have specific rules about them, and it's all, so the rules that apply, the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment stuff that applies to when you can just search somebody for substances or anything like that. It's the same laws that apply to when you can search somebody or find out if they have valid immigration status. So, or at least it's rooted in the same thing. And so it does seem, it looks at least a little bit on its face like that those rules are getting pushed a little bit right now. And I wanted to sort of refresh myself and see. I know that they are sometimes a little different. And that's kind of why I broke out the old immigration book, to start reminding myself where all this stuff comes from and what these rules are, because this is like half of our Constitution, guys. This is a really good chunk of what makes it worth living here. What is so excited about what's so exciting about living here, what makes it so great to live here, are these protections that we have. The other stuff that we get because of those protections. If you look at people who live under different regimes for long periods of time, those other great things that you think of fade away over time because the protections help that other stuff kind of flourish. So without those protections, the other stuff starts to diminish and become less and less accessible. Let's see here. Ren v. US. Ren. I have to look that one up. I can't. I know it. I know I learned it. Random checkpoint made me wonder if random stop counts as an investigative stop with cause. So, no, it does not. Tell me if I'm wrong. But I'm pretty sure that there's cause. There's, hey, we see something and there's a reason for us to stop you. And then you are allowed, as a police officer is allowed to perform a completely random stop, like every 10th car. If they truly close their eyes and point to every 10th car, I believe that as a general rule, and there's probably some restrictions on it, that is more or less acceptable. And that's kind of how DUI checkpoints get by. But it has to be truly, truly random. It cannot be, oh, we happen to pick the person, every 5th to 8th person, depending on what their skin tone seems to be. That's not okay. That's never allowed. And if that's what's happening, and if you can demonstrate that that's what's happening, well, then you have a violation of various constitutional protections. Airport searches. So this is all. It's all intertwined. These different protections and different things, but there are ways to get around them. In terms of the things like I said, like the random, truly random. But what I'm seeing, apparently they're out at Union Station checking things, and I don't know. Making sure that they are truly random is key, because if they're not, then, and so I'm hoping that somebody's making sure that's happening. It's so funny, guys. I'm seeing out of nowhere, when you're live, you get all of these little things where it asks you to pull this person up as a guest, pull this person, and some of them are, I saw Attorney die a minute ago and I almost brought you up or almost invited you, but now it's asking me to invite all of these people like Aaron Parnas. I don't know I'm not going to invite Aaron Parnas as a guest. He has things to do, but it's funny that it said Aaron Parnas and somebody else really recognizable a minute ago, and I was like, why am I not going to, or Christian Divine. I was like, he doesn't want to come up onto my live. Is it random as criteria like an airport? If everyone is searched or wanted, that's valid too. And I'm, Attorney Di, I'm scared of the guest button. I've accidentally hit it a couple of times. I'm really nervous about it. Attorney Di said, and I'm when it's absolutely everybody, I cannot remember. I always thought there was something about the fact that you were voluntarily going in there, like when you were going into the airport, but there is definitely something about the fact that everybody's going through the same thing, and then every 10th person is getting pulled aside for extra whatever. But there's a little bit of flexibility in there, and I know that the Patriot Act gave them a lot of flexibility when it came to air travel. That was part of what they said in the in the Patriot Act was giving a little bit more flexibility in air travel. Yeah, who is the 10th person is the question, right? Especially when there's like 8 people wide. Like, oh, you go this way, you go this way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sure. But the one thing that, it was the one thing that I remember from criminal procedure, which is criminal procedure is the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment. It's the one where you learn about Miranda rights and all of the stuff about what you can search and what you can't search and digging through people's bags and all of the criminal, all of that side of criminal law, all of the, what you're allowed to do, what you're allowed to look through and not allowed to look through as a police officer. It was one of my favorite classes. It's so much fun, very tactile. It's very, a lot of, here's the cabinet you can open, if this door's open a little bit and you see something, you can look at that, but not open the other door. A lot of like really specific fun scenarios. It was very, very fun for me. And Attorney Di also said it was one of hers. So I'm glad to hear that. And it's fun. It was drawing. There was a lot of drawings in that class. There was a lot of whiteboard drawings. But it's also, the thing that I remember is that it started out with these really broad rules about all of the things that police aren't allowed to do. And then it felt like the entire rest of the class was just learning how narrow, like every single case you read after that was just narrowing it down until it was a smaller and smaller and smaller right. Smaller protection, because it was like, they cannot do anything except for this and 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 this until there was like almost nothing left. But I guess that's, kind of how case law works. It's, it starts with the big case and then you narrow down all the exclusions. That's what common law is all about. It was a really fun class. If anybody, it was a fun thing to study. One of my favorites. So that was, yeah. How is everybody tonight, by the way? Hope everybody, yeah. I'm trying to come on more often, and this is, by the way, anybody who is, if you were not following Attorney Di, absolutely follow Attorney Di, but I assume everybody's following Attorney Di because she's amazing. But she's the one who pushed me, and I'm trying to come on live more as a result. Rights are reserved to, but if anybody sees her though, that's, if you're not following her, she's in my comments, go follow her because she's absolutely incredible. Rights are reserved to the people. Police can intrude in narrow circumstances. Yeah, I mean that is it's like I said, it's sort of more of a feeling that happens in the class that, as you go through the class, it just feels like every single case you read is just one more thing where you're like, oh, this is going to be one where they finally say that, they can't do it. And it's just going to be, sorry, I got a dog here. It's going to be, and there's just one more and they're just like, nope. No, they can do this and they can do this and it was a bunch of examples like the police walked into someone's apartment and there was a dresser and they went over and opened the dresser and found something, and it's like, well, certainly they're not going to be able to use the thing they found in the dresser as part of the case because there's no way. And then, somehow the court would find some excuse to be like, well, they, it was warm that day and they were going to eventually want to put on a t-shirt. So they were going to go into the dresser to get a t-shirt and then they would have found it. Like, it was like, come on, guys. So it just felt like they kept coming up with excuses to make this right narrower and narrower. It just kind of, I think it was just more about the fact that you were reading all of these cases in a row. I read it so you don't have to. That is, Roland, it is arbitrary. it's not arbitrary, but it did sort of feel like it sometimes. When you read them all in a row like that, it definitely some days was like, oh, come on. You've got to be kidding me. And let's see here. I'm sorry, I missed something here. Let's see. Where was that? Wait. Do you see future con law body of work around agencies conducting arrests without identification? So I'll tell you. So the issue of police identifying themselves has been kind of it's been a case law question, and it's been a political question. So there's kind of two things happening at the same time. On the one hand, there's this whole legal case law issue with whether or not police need to identify themselves in order to let someone know that they're not A, trying to hurt them, B, whether or not they are, but let's put that aside. But letting them know that they're actually a police officer and not, say, a person. I don't know how else to say this, but before someone kicks down your door, they should let you know that they're not robbing you. Just not great. Sorry, that is not a great example, but it's the best I can come up with off the top of my head. So that is on one side. On the other side, there's been this whole conversation about whether, just as a matter of police, what's the word I'm looking for here? Generally, just being held responsible for their actions, whether police should identify themselves, whether they need to wear body cameras, and all of that kind of stuff. That has been a little bit more of a political question than it's been a legal question. There's a mosquito flying around my leg. Sorry, I'm just sitting here watching him, and I don't know exactly where the two, because political questions are usually decided by politicians, policy people. The legal questions are maybe decided by judges. So figuring out exactly which side goes where, I don't totally know. And so there are issues on both sides, and I'm just not exactly sure where that line is. It's something that's been bothering me. My guess is I probably just need to go back and reread, and I'll find the answer. But it's a very, very good question. I do think that there is... I certainly think, and there's something that's really been bothering me that I've been noticing in the case law lately, which is that there's been a real push towards putting... Okay, I'm so glad Yeah, they don't know it either. There's been a real push lately towards putting as much of the kind of the documents that are being released in discovery by the federal government under seal as possible. And specifically, they've said a few times that they're doing that in order to essentially stifle discussion about these issues. And that is not how things are supposed to work. That bothers me, because our whole system is supposed to be designed, the constitutional architecture is designed around the free flow of ideas, and all of us having broad access to this information and making good decisions about who we want to put in charge based on having access to as much information as possible. And if you start restricting that information, then that whole system kind of falls in on itself. So anything that works against that, I believe, is contrary to our... It's not... it's a little bit contrary to the explicit words in our Constitution, but it's more contrary to the bridge work of the Constitution, to the actual architecture that holds the Constitution up. And I've been seeing this more and more. It really bothers me. And generally, the idea that you need to be hiding people's faces because we are so unhappy with the policy decisions being made that we need to protect them from the public. does not feel like it's in line with what we're supposed to be doing. You know, that is not, that's not how this is supposed to work. So, I'm not loving that. And the more I see these, one of the things that I'm really enjoying about reading these dockets every day, which it's a lot that I'm not enjoying because it's a lot of reading, but is seeing the things that are getting filed across the dockets, where they're going from case to case to case, and you'll notice sort of, thank you very much, that I'll notice that they're filing often very, very similar documents in like 8 different cases, and they'll do it all at once. Like they suddenly got an idea at DOJ and decided to file this one thing in 8 different cases. And I'm not sure anybody, you know, has enough spare time on their hands to sit around and read this other than me. So I'm sitting here watching this, like I feel like I need to tell somebody that this is going on, because I don't think anybody else can see this. That's kind of why I've been talking about some of these things that may sound a little, I guess, esoteric. I don't know. But that's one of the things that's been bugging me. It's really been bugging me, is when I start to see all of these motions to file under seal. I'm seeing copy and paste. There seemed to be a lot of copy and pasting going on. And it was really funny when I started noticing the same attorney names on certain things. And I was like, interesting. That is a, you know, when I saw the one guy who said, you know, hey, I need a break. He was like, I need a break because I'm scheduled in 3 different places, and cool. And I was like, okay, cool. And then the next day I noticed another filing that said something similar, but it didn't say I need a break. It just said, you know, I need an extension because the other guy screwed up. And then I looked down and I was like, it's the same attorney. But he didn't say it this time. Sorry, the dog's chewing on stuff. He didn't say it this time. Interesting. And then I kind of kept noticing that same attorney doing the same thing. And I was like, all right. So, okay, am I using Pacer to get documents? I am not using Pacer because Pacer gets expensive. Sometimes I'm using Pacer, but only when I need something fast and I can't find it anywhere else, because it's expensive. I'll tell you what I do is Court Listener. Court Listener is pretty good. The reason I give you guys, by the way, all of the civil case numbers, the 25-CV- and those 5 numbers, is because if you just type those into Google, you'll usually get a Court Listener link somewhere near the top, and it'll take you to a relatively recent, I mean, it's pretty up to date. If it's not hours up to date, it's usually pretty close, of the docket for that case. And it'll give you almost every docket entry, and you can download any of the docket entries. A couple of things usually you'll have to get, like, pay for off a Pacer if you want them, but most things you can get. The other day, you know, like I needed that filing from DCV Trump, and it wasn't up there yet, so I had to go pay for it on Pacer. But as a general rule, that's what I use, because Court Listener, it's a 501c3, and they are doing the Lord's work. They are, this is all they do. This is their shtick. This is their thing. They just pull stuff off a Pacer and put it online for us to access. It's just, they are just doing great work. Yeah, so that's, if you need to find stuff, that is a great way to do it. Attacking law enforcement officers and their families is not supposed to happen either. You are correct. But ordering them to do things that are so problematic that they're being put in that position is, and then allowing, you know, hiding them, that's part of why we don't usually let them hide who they are. is because somebody, you know, somewhere up the chain, somebody's got to be held accountable for the actions. How are they funded? I think donations. I think they even asked for donations. God, my hair is a mess. Sorry, guys. I think they even asked for donations. You know, they don't. It's like thanks, Di. I'll talk to you tomorrow or talk to you later. Thank you very, very much. It's good talking to you. Good seeing you. It's courtlistener.com. And they just if you type in any random any of those case names, any of those case numbers, the 25, which is the year, dash CV if it's a civil case, dash, and then there'll be 5 numbers. Usually a court listener link will come up. If for some reason it doesn't, put a space and type court listener, all one word, court listener. And a courtlistener.com link should come up for it. And it'll give you the docket. It's awesome. I discovered them late. I used to use Westlaw for everything, and then I don't have it right now. So, what is the most misunderstood thing about law? Oh, thank you very much. I'm gonna say. I'm crunching through a couple of things here. You know, I think it has something to do. I'm working my way around the idea of the word illegal. Illegal is something that always bothers me because it seems like there's this general idea that that people have that everything is either legal or illegal, and it's just not how it works. You know, there's just so much more nuance to all of it, and I think people really do know that. I think almost everybody really does know that if they stop and think about it for a minute. But it's just when it first pops into their head, it's like, is that illegal? And then I always want to be like, I always like stop for a second. I'm like, well, what do you mean by illegal? And it always kind of bugs me. Like the word illegal in general just kind of always bugs me, even though, by the way, I use it too. I do it all the time. But when I really want to use it, instead of illegal, it's just that there isn't a single word because things aren't divided up like that. So, for example, if I hurt somebody, can I be held liable for that damage? That's a question. But somebody will say, well, if you punch somebody, is that illegal? Okay. Or if there's water on the floor in the store and they don't clean it up, is that illegal? And it's like, well, what can you help me here? You know, if someone slips on it and they weren't warned, maybe, and the person, you know, who should have known that it was there and didn't clean it up, and yada yada yada, could they maybe be held liable for it? Maybe. But that's the best I can do. So, you know, that's the thing, is that it's a very long answer to a very short question. Sorry. It's such a boring point to, you know, boring hill to die on. But it is something that always kind of sits in my head. It's one of those weird little words that strikes me in a problematic way. And it's so dumb for me to get tied up on something so silly, but yeah. But it just feels like there's a lot of nuance to that. And that's probably. But I do think most people know know it. If they sit down for a second, they know what they understand. Bye, Ian. Thank you very much. So Some things might be legal in one, and then there's the state thing. Forget about it. Oh man, so many. Oh my gosh, you guys! Like, there's so many questions people ask me, and they're even like there's just little bits and pieces that change from state to state, and I'm just like, oh gosh, I don't even know what to say. Like I don't even know how to start with that, because it's like, well, that little bit might have to do with the state thing, and that, so I'm just completely worthless. But yeah, there's so many things that change. You have no idea how many things change from state to state. Oh, you guys. And so, yeah. And you know, things, even if we were talking about criminal, the crimes are different everywhere. And so, you know, you'll hear somebody say, did you know that it's illegal to do this? And it's like, well, in some states, there are certain lines that you can or cannot cross. You know, or somebody, I was talking about, what was it? Trespassing in Illinois. And I was using the definition of trespassing in Illinois because it's a really clean, easy definition. It was something that I could work with. And the definition, I think it was trespassing. I might have it confused with something else, but it might be some... oh, shoot, it wasn't trespassing. It was one step worse than trespassing. Because basically, trespassing is like two things, and then there's another crime that's like three things. I forget what it is. But the New York version, the New York State version of it, is breaking and entering. And so somebody was like, what? Arguing about what? Burglary. Thank you. Yes, burglary. And the old common law version of it was just entering a house without permission at night. That was burglary. So this is just how these things evolve over time. Why is Louisiana law so different than the rest of the state still? Oh, you came to the right person. You asked the right person, because I have no visual aids. I did my first year of law school at LSU, at Louisiana State University, where I actually was required to study for two degrees. All LSU law students take two sets of classes. We do civil law, which is, we think of it as French. It's a little bit more complicated, but it's actually Roman law. And then there's common law, which is English law. And it's a slightly different style of thinking in the law. Common law, the general idea. Here's my best example. Where was it? If there's a law that's written down, a piece of legislation that's written down, and it's a little vague about something, and you go to a judge, and the judge says, all right, this definition is a little vague, but I'm going to say that whenever this set of facts that happened here comes up, I'm not doing a good job here. Sorry. Well, basically the difference is that when judges define things in common law, those definitions stick. Those definitions stick around, and we continue to use them moving forward. They let everybody know what that word means from then on. In civil law, it's a good guess. You have a pretty good sense. If you want to find out what something means, you can go back and look up that judge and see how they've defined it last time, but they're not required to follow it again. So you never know. They could change their mind tomorrow. And so that's the difference basically between common law and civil law. But the other big thing about civil law is that they have what's called the Code Civil, which is this book of several thousand rules that they use that are kind of the core, and all law kind of bounces off of the civil code. And so instead of having this ball of legal decisions that we use to bounce everything off of. They have the Civil Code. And the Civil Code was written by Justinian, Roman emperor, and has been rewritten. It was rewritten by Napoleon. It's been rewritten several times. The Louisiana has its own version of it that they've changed a few times. But the idea is that you have this civil code. And most countries in the world are civil code jurisdictions. They're code law jurisdictions. Everything's based on a code. Only countries that basically were English colonies use legal precedent and follow judicial edicts, basically, and allow judges to kind of set the rules and to interpret, and for those interpretations to stick. It's a little confusing. It's very confusing, but once again, you ask me a short question, you get a long, long answer. But this, again, happens to be one of the things that I know really, really well because I spent a lot of time studying this. So that's the Civil Code, and that's the difference between Louisiana law and the rest of America. Yeah, it is a really interesting place to learn the law. I am so glad that I had the opportunity to study down there because most people who go to law school in the rest of the United States don't really even, it's a little hard to understand that there can be another way of thinking when you only learn one. And so learning two kind of forces you to understand that everything isn't just this way because you see two ways of doing it. And it may sound weird to think that of course there's another way of doing it, but it's not that obvious to a lot of people that there's another way of doing this. Learning two different ways, I think, really shaped the way that I see the law. So I consider myself very, very lucky to have gotten to do that. And I'm really happy that I had that opportunity. So, by the way, just going to throw out a thing. So I've been doing my morning reports. If anybody's been watching them, hopefully they're landing. I just finished, hopefully, the draft for tomorrow, unless something new comes out. Once I get close enough to California's courts closing, and I'm like, I think I'm good for tonight. I can get everything ready. But I also, you never know. Something could happen in the morning, and so but if you guys are watching, please do check it out. It takes a lot of work, so check it out if you can. And if you want to keep me going, there are ways to do it. If you click on my profile, I've got my link tree, and there are all kinds of ways to support me and keep me doing this because I am running on support right now. It's the only way I can keep doing this. So this takes a lot of time and work, believe it or not. A lot of research and a lot of reading. So not that I'm not enjoying it, because I really am. It's fun. I'm also I am putting all of these up on the YT. I'm not supposed to say that word out loud. The YT and the other things, and you can find those also in my profile. In the link thing. So just a little thing. And you can also, by the way, subscribe here too, which is, I keep forgetting. All these people who do lives are like, Brian, you're supposed to do this stuff while you're live. Like, you're supposed to tell people to tap the screen. You're supposed to do this. You're supposed to do that. And I'm like, I just start talking and then I forget where I am for an hour. And then all of a sudden I come to and realize, oh, look what time it is. So about and then about 3 or 4 times throughout, I run out of things to say for about 30 seconds and kind of stare blankly and then jump back into something else. All right. So, okay, that was my random commercial. Where are we on our... So tomorrow, by the way, if anybody is interested, because a lot of people have been asking me about this new election executive order. and I don't have a lot of. So I'm trying to stay in my lane, trying to do my law stuff, and so I'm waiting to see. It's gonna, somebody's gonna sue over it, right? I'm gonna wait till the lawsuits come out and start talking about those rather than just talking about the executive order in a vacuum because, okay, by itself, who knows? But what I am going to do tomorrow, unless something crazy happens in the news and I have to cut this for time, is I'm going to run through all of the currently open voter or election-related cases that we have open right now. I thought that was an interesting thing to kind of toss in there. I think there are 4 of them that are technically open. One of them technically is closed. I thought, okay, I don't know if he issued it. I got a ton of messages, so I assumed that he issued it. I didn't actually look because my response was, chasing executive orders is tiring and turns out not to be that useful until later when the case law comes up and I have to start reading them for that. So I didn't actually look. But what I did do was go and find all of the cases related to his other executive orders about voting and pull those up. So tomorrow morning, unless something crazy happens in the next couple hours, I've got in there, just ran through the four voter law, or 4 or 5, whatever they are, election cases that are going on right now. One of them is technically closed, but I think technically it's still open, but it's really closed. But it's just really interesting to kind of see. It's one of the things that I think you hear all of these cases just over and over and over again. There's too much. It's impossible to keep track. And so every once in a while, I can say, okay, today we'll talk about this case because it happened, talk about this because this happened, whatever. But just kind of stop and just maybe every once in a while when I have time, when I'm not just getting killed by the news, I'll try to go through and say, hey, let's just talk about voting rights cases for a little bit and toss them out there. I'll try to do that when I can. BBB, so I put out every morning morning gets relative. But every morning-ish, I put out something called the Morning Report, which is it's news on the last 24 hours in the federal courts. So if you keep an eye out for that, I try to get it out in the AM. I try to get it out early AM. But it's a little hard. Hey, Harambe, how you doing? I didn't see you before. Didn't see you come in. So the problem is that I got to get up, make sure nothing else has happened overnight. If anything else has happened, I got to research it, read it, rewrite everything, shoot it, edit it, add graphics, get it online. So getting it up, I really want it up by 9. That would be my goal someday. I got it up really early this morning because I had the whole weekend to get everything ready. But some days there have been days that I get it up at 1 or 12:30, 1 o'clock because something crazy happens. Oh, thank you, dog fan. I appreciate it. Coffee is very, very much needed. Coffee is what I'm running on. I see Cincinnati riot. I grew up in Cincinnati, so everything in Cincinnati is a riot. So keep an eye out for it. But I'll unless, like I said, unless something happens tomorrow, because sometimes stories do have to get bumped if something crazy happens. Thank you very much, Harambe. I think I'm pretty happy with it. For a long time I've been just kind of coming up with a story and making it, coming up with a story and making it, and this has bothered me that all of these cases are kind of jumbled together. And so I don't know why it just suddenly popped into my head. Why don't I just start figuring out, just do something to kind of keep these cases fresh? And initially I was thinking I need to find a way to do it for myself. And I was like, why don't I do it for everybody? So here we are. Well, that's gonna happen. So yeah, check that out. You'll see, and you can watch. Today's already in my my thingy. Let's see here. No, I missed a good question here. Are they afraid of mail-in voting? Medicare has been impacted and people would likely... So the thing... Okay, here's the thing about voting. By the way, somewhere in here, there is a book that I've been reading, and I cannot find it. It is somewhere under a pile of paper. I don't know. I'll find it eventually. But it's my Law of Democracy book, which I was going through and is awesome. And we'll get back to. But one of the kind of really important things that I took from reading the kind of opening parts of it is that the Constitution does not give instructions on how to run an election. And that is intentional. Each state is supposed to run its own election by its own rules. And that's the way it has always been. And it's kind of one of the things I found really interesting, almost funny, is that there was a time when people, you didn't show up at a balloting place and they gave you a ballot. You walked in with a piece of paper that you'd written at home saying who you wanted to vote for, and you went in and dropped it off. And so that was the first version. And then in order to expedite single-party voting, parties started pre-printing ballots. So, you know, whatever party, the looking for a color that doesn't mean anything. The purple party would print up a ballot for 1803 midterm election, or 1802 midterm election, and write, I want to vote for, and write out all of their candidates. And then they'd give it to you, and you just walk in and drop it in the ballot box. And that way, they wouldn't have to get you to vote for candidate A and candidate B and candidate C. They would just have to get you to go in and drop in that one ballot, and it would automatically vote for their whole lineup. And because people just wrote their own ballots, anything that had the names on it was fine. And that's the way it worked for a while. And then states started it switched over. And I think this was called the Australian system. Or I might be confusing my stories, but where they switched over, at some point they switched over to this thing where instead you do what you have today, which is you go in and everybody's written down and you mark the person that you want. And I know there was a point where there was some kind of case law around the order that you put the names in. I know I read a case in there somewhere about, because whoever was doing it started, putting all the people they wanted to win up at the top. And so, that wasn't allowed. They changed that, whatever. But regardless, the balloting and voting system in New York State and the balloting and voting system in South Carolina were always completely independent of one another, have always been. That is the way it's supposed to be. So for the federal government to come in is unprecedented. And it's kind of interesting because one of the big things that is getting fought really hard right now is this executive order that is about proof of citizenship. And I remember about 8 or 9 months ago, I was kind of doing some research on voter protection on VoPro, and I started looking into state by state voter ID laws and stuff like that because I just kind of wanted to see what was going on in each state, and I started making this big spreadsheet where I wrote all this stuff down because this is what I do for fun. And I remember thinking, every state did it differently, but one way or another, somewhere along the path, every state I looked up did ask for proof of citizenship. It would just be in a different spot. So, for example, one state might use might have like a couple different ways of doing it, but if you did it through your driver's license, then 3 steps before you got your driver's license, they would confirm your citizenship. So by the time you got to your driver's license, they knew you'd already gotten, so then they wouldn't check it again. But if you did it this way, then they would check it. But one way or another, almost, as far as I could tell, every state, like one way or another, did seem to check. And the ones that did same-day voting did seem to have some sort of a requirement on that day that you had to show up with something. And usually the same-day voting ones, it would be, what's it called? Sometimes it was provisional. Maybe not. But anyway, regardless of all that, the point is that it's all state control. And so this is really I think the bigger problem is that this is something that is absolutely south of the federalism wall. And the federalism wall, we are not supposed to cross. So that is a bigger concern. What is the likelihood that Trump will attempt to suspend election? Who knows? Who knows? I can't, who knows? Do you know words from SCOTUS? Do you know, because I saw there were a couple, there was one other that had some really weird rules. It was maybe a Dakota. One of them that had a really weird rule about same-day registration that it took me a while to understand. I had to do a lot of reading to understand it. But I'm wondering about Maine. But I feel like everything that when I ended up taking the rabbit all the way down the hole, I ended up finding somewhere along the line that it required something that did verify who you were and that you had some sort of citizenship evidence. Even if they didn't call it citizenship evidence, it would be, a birth certificate or something like that. Romans, rocks that they would put into baskets or containers, that was also with the Greeks, did that as well. Did the black and white rock, black and white stones. And there's a word for it as well, I believe, and I cannot think of the word, but there's a word for the, and it might be, I feel like, somewhere in my head, somewhere rattling around in my classics addled mind, there's a word that we use today that is rooted in that, what they used to call the bag that they kept the black and white stones in, or something like that. Like one of those things is still used today as like a word for somehow associated with voting. I can't remember what, but it's like ballot or something. It's not that, but it's something like that is based on that old word. The dog is whining at me. I don't know if you guys can hear that. So anyway, but I don't know whether we're going to have an issue. I'm much better at predicting the past than I am the future, and I try to stick to that. I can tell you pretty well what we have done in the past about things. Guessing what we're going to do in the future, I find I'm really, really lousy at. My guesses are never, well, it's not that they're never good, but they don't seem to have a great response rate. My odds are not as good as they should be. All right, there's a golden retriever over here that's whiny and needy. Did I catch? There was one more in here. Prior to gerrymandering. So gerrymandering is named after someone specific. And my friend, hey Larry, how's it going? My old roommate's grandmother apparently used to be very, very picky about this issue. Wait. No. I think I'm getting my stories mixed up. Anyway, whatever. Apparently, like the name is Saltwater, NaClH2O. That's good. That's good. I like that. I think it's Gary. I think that's the thing, is that it was Gary, and so whoever it was very specific about it being gerrymandering and not gerrymandering. I have this weird feeling that I might be getting a story that one of my friends told me confused with a story that I heard John Mulaney tell at some point. Yeah, But anyway, I saw this message that said I'm saltwater, and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's good. And then I was like, oh, NaClH2O. I got it. All right. It looked like a salamander, and his name was gerrymandering. Okay, all right. Was it Gary or Jerry? Because somebody at some point I heard be very, very specific that it was supposed to be Gary and not Jerry, and they were upset about it. The Brennan Center gives a good history on Jerry. Okay, but the Brennan Center is awesome. They do good work. Early 19th century, from the name of Governor Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts, or Gary of Massachusetts. Still, you know what? It still could have been either my old roommate or John Mulaney. Still not sure. Thank you, Compy Bear. I appreciate it. Question about Ohio. Fire away. I don't know. I'll try. Let's see if I've got an answer about Ohio. I might. Oh, my mom just had surgery there, so I may have to head back in that direction soon, because they're apparently all, she can't get out. She's stuck for 4 weeks. I may have to go do a turn. I'm waiting to hear my Ohio question. I wonder what happened. There was somebody in here who had like a Cincinnati name earlier, and I was like, what? Don't hear that a lot. We had one many years ago. We had a Cinco de Mayo party here called Cinco de Mayo with two guys from Ohio, because there were two guys named Brian, both from Ohio, that lived here and actually now live here again. Tall in the middle and round at each end. Ohio voted for rights in the Constitution, but they're not allowing it to go through. Oh, yeah, it is. Oof. So that is not something I think that any no federal court is going to step into. That is an internal state matter, and there is a very specific case that dealt with this, because the question is the Constitution. Hi, Obi. Sorry, ignoring the dog. He will not be ignored. Constitution, Article 5. It's one of the articles. Article 5, Article 4. Full faith and credit. No. There we go. Nope. No. I know it's right in here somewhere. I want to say it's Article 4, Section 3. Anyway, it's about the guarantee of Republican form. Oh, there we go. Article 4, Section 4. The United States shall guarantee to every state a Republican form of government. And I have a whole thing about Article 4, Section 4 that I was in the middle of writing, and then I got busy, and I really want to come back to it at some point. But Article 4, Section 4, Republican form of government, there's this whole thing about what that means, and basically it doesn't mean anything, because so they narrowed down what it meant into a really, really small thing, because that somebody tried to use that to get the Supreme Court to force a state to enact a law that was kind of being treated like that. It was being sort of ignored by the state legislature or something like that, and the U.S. Supreme Court basically said, look, federalism says we got to stay out of the state's spaces, you know. And so they did define what Republican form of government meant, and I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's very, very narrow, and so they won't step in if a state is not providing its citizens essentially with a Republican form of government. So what it is, if it is not constitutional, it would be a violation of the state constitution. And that is the issue, is that it's a state constitutional issue, but not a federal constitutional issue. So that's the thing that that's the thing you gotta check out. And but I understand what you're saying. So I talked a little bit ago, Timothy Marshall, about the EO that dismantles mail-in voting. I'm going to do, unless something else happens in the news, I'm planning to do a thing on the other voting cases tomorrow in the morning report. But it's going to be a side. I'll put that. But I won't know what's going on with that until somebody does something with it. Like him putting out another EO, we got to see what they try to do with it, and then somebody's going to do a case, right? Somebody's going to file a case about it. Let's wait till the case gets filed, and then we'll see. Because in the abstract, who knows? It's a little too hard to guess. Paul is 6 feet. He works as a butcher's assistant, wears a size 9 shirt. What does he weigh? Meat. Excellent answer. Thanks. I'm a big fan. Oh, good. I'm so glad. All right, guys, I am going to wrap up because I need to go eat dinner. And it's about that time. And then I got to go to bed so I can get up early and get this thing recorded. I got it, right? It was meat. Yeah, I agree, Larry. Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys. And I'm putting the lives on YouTube as well. So if you want to go watch them, you can. And if anybody wants to check out, and thank you. Hopefully my mom will recover well quickly too. Anybody wants to check out my profile with my link tree, there are ways to keep me going. I would appreciate it. And in the morning, I will have the new morning report. And I will do that run through of the voting cases, which are worth looking at. States are just agents of the federal government dealing with voting. Trump said today the states are just agents of the federal government dealing with voting. That is someone who has never read a book, a law book. I don't know how else to respond to that. That is somebody who just doesn't know the history or understand how the law of election works. So I don't know what else to say to that. That's just not correct. So, all right. Buon noche. All right. Good night, everybody. I will see you all tomorrow bright and early. Boop.